next week. Mark?
Okay, Tara, thanks. There are more protests up in Cleveland following the grand jury decision there this week not to indict the officers involved in the shooting death of young Tamir Rice. The 12-year-old, as you know, was killed while playing with what turned out to be an airsoft pellet gun outside a recreation center near his home last year. Joining us live today in studio to talk about this case is the former police chief in both Cleveland and Fairborn. Of course, we know him from his days in Fairborn, Patrick Oliver, now the director of the Criminal Justice Program at Cedarville University. Glad to have you back on 5 on 2.
Thanks for having me again.
Welcome back. Obviously, the first question, your reaction to this grand jury decision.
As a criminal justice professional, my reaction is to support the grand jury. But I would say that I think it would be tough, based on the evidence that was revealed by the prosecutor's office, for them to convict either of these officers in a felony.
In fact, when this was announced earlier this week, I think it was the DA who used the term a perfect storm of human error. He said there was just the way it kind of all played out. And he also pointed to dispatchers somewhat, the fact that somebody at some point knew that this might not be a real gun, but sadly that information was not relayed to the officers as they pulled up on that scene.
Yes, they didn't know that. So as far as they were concerned, this was a real weapon by an adult.
Right, exactly right. And it's just, you know, it's easy to sit back, you know, a year later and second guess police officers in this case and many other cases. But I'll tell you what, when it comes down to that split second and your life is on the line, you've got to make that decision. There's a decision that needs to be made quickly, and then, you know, it's not an easy job. I think people just, I don't think, really understand how difficult it is for police officers to make these decisions when their life is on the line.
That's a tough decision to make.
The Cuyahoga County prosecutor in this case, Tim McGinty, said his office was required, ethically, he says, to tell the grand jury they did not believe a conviction was likely in this case. He's taking some heat for that. Your thoughts on that?
I know Prosecutor Tim McGinty. I think he's an honorable man. There are a couple things that were unusual in this case. Number one, hiring 2 expert witnesses before the grand jury to inform the grand jury. And second, allowing those 2 officers to read prepared statements with no questions. That's unusual.
Of course, the one advantage the grand jury had in this case is they had the surveillance video. You know, without that video, who knows how this might have turned out. But here again, and the DA said that using the enhanced video, I mean, they took it down frame by frame to try to indicate to the grand jury what was happening and what exactly those officers were responding to. I mean, surveillance video has really changed the game.
Yes, but the standard for judging a police shooting, a fatal shooting, is the Graham versus Connor case from 1989. And in that case, objective reasonableness is the standard. Would a reasonable officer believe that their life was in danger?
Right.
That's the key issue.
Yeah, I mean, it's just tragic that the life of a 12-year-old was lost in this. You know the Cleveland community very well, having been the police chief there. Of course, the concern now, you've got, you know, some protesters in the streets. What this does, short-term, long-term, to police community relations. What's your insight there?
It's going to be a tough road to hoe, because even though the officer's action is probably legal, people wonder about police legitimacy. In other words, was this a tactical maneuver that the police officer should have used? In other words, they put themselves in a poor tactical position and then have to shoot themselves out of it. Did they give this person, Tamir Rice, an opportunity for a tactical surrender? And so that's probably the big concern on the part of family. If it was done another way, maybe their son would still be alive. Yeah,
and even though the grand jury has weighed in, this is not over. There's a civil case involved, and the family is suing the city. I also read last night a city council member up there is trying now to take some sort of action against the police officers. So this, it won't bring Tamir back, but this case is not over.
No, there are 2 things left to happen. One, the Department of Justice, United States Department of Justice, is doing a civil rights investigation to determine if either of these officers violated Tamir Rice's civil rights. And then second, the police department will conduct an administrative investigation to determine if either of these officers violated any policies, procedures, rules, or regulations in this situation. So that's what remains.
All right, very good. Former Cleveland Police Chief Patrick Oliver, we appreciate your insight, but especially on this case, given the fact that you were chief up there at one time. We appreciate you coming in.
All right, you're welcome.
All right, sir. Happy New Year. Good to see you. Still to come today here on 5 on 2, 4 million people